Matev Raskovic, lots of talk about the young, but the current establishment. There's a comment here, who are we going to blame when there's no one left to blame? I'll leave that.
It would require radical mobilization and organization of...
How to walk the talk, and despite what you've said, Franz Timmermans, that has come in after what you said.
Serbia is day in, day out showing its strategic commitment towards the EU. I think that we've invested and are investing a whole lot of time and effort and political power into regional stability and regional exchange of views. I've become the Prime Minister about 2 months ago, and the most I've done is basically regional stability. In the past 2 months we had four regional events. I tend to speak with all of my fellows prime ministers from the region. We tend to focus on the economic agenda, also the connectivity agenda, building roads, networks, youth. We have regional youth cooperation initiative. We just agreed on the transport community. I think the dialogue is there, and I think it's stronger than ever in the region. And so that regional stability and regional connectivity will help us a lot in economic development, because we are all in the region kind of comparatively small countries and markets. So the regional stability will, or instability, will impact all of us, regardless of how at home we are stable or unstable. I like the fact that I've been known as the Minister for Digitalization and Innovation, because I wasn't. I was the Minister of Public Administration, which doesn't go hand in hand with modernization. But my first and foremost
in other words, focus, you had a portfolio of contradictions.
Exactly. My first and foremost focus was digitalization, because I don't think that public administration can function as it was functioning for such a long time. And Serbia was falling behind really badly in terms of e-government.
Do you reckon this is making a significant impact on the post-war generation?
We have to change. We have to change the way, in the way we provide services to our citizens. We have to change the way we provide services to businesses. This is unsustainable. And so I've started that as the Minister of Public Administration, and I was the Minister of Public Administration and Local Governments. Quite a long title. No one really knew what it stands for. I was usually introduced as this is Ana Brnabić, is the Minister of Public, and then
Did you work hard to change the title, because it's indicative of how the mentality of a country can change with digitization, innovation?
It can change completely, and I see that's the key focus of Serbia. I think that that's where our chances lie. It's not in traditional growth, it's in digitalization. We have fantastic small and medium-sized businesses. They started as startups 10, 12 years ago. We don't even know about them, and they grow at a rate of 10 to 20% a year. Whereas we have we have growth, but it's also kind of sluggish, 2.8%, 3%, 2.5%. We need to find growth in non-traditional areas.
But what I'm coming back around to as well is wondering whether digitization, as we've seen in other countries, is radicalizing the political forces and making communication, intercommunication much easier, which therefore is complicating the issue of what we can loosely call a degree of normalization, preparation for joining the European Union. It's mobilizing forces which otherwise might not be so mobilized as they are becoming at the moment.
I think if we open up to digitalization and to youth and to these young entrepreneurs, research and development, especially in countries like Serbia and the region, I think we need to learn to give up part of our control as politicians or someone who's governing, because we do not know enough about it. And I'm trying to do that in Serbia. We've helped organize this organization called Digital Serbia, mostly made up by these very successful startups who today employ more than 200 people in Serbia and more than 200 people in the US, for example, Serbian companies, to ask them what they need. I try to be very open and to run a very open somewhat horizontal government, which is also unorthodox for the region, to hear these people, because I think that's the new area of growth. It will completely change our society, and we have to be open to that change.
Now, you'll expect me to ask this question. What about Russia? There's a clear signal and a clear mood, music, and also reality of what is happening, which suggests that Serbia is moving away from the European Union, and certainly there is a rival for influence and a role in the future of Serbia being generated by Russia. Now, you've modified your position a little in recent weeks. What is your position now?
The position has always been very clear, especially now. Our road is to the EU. Our strategic focus is the EU. Where we want to be is EU. And we want to be kind of within a very stable, very connected region in the EU, which is why I value the Berlin process so much. Russia, I mean, obviously we have a strong ties with Russia. They are obviously in terms of religion, they're in terms of tradition, and they need to be valued and respected. They're also in terms of economy. I mean, we do have free trade agreements signed with Russia. A lot of our exports and our economic growth right now depends also on that
But can
relationship
you understand
as well.
the uncertainty in the minds of many in this room about this?
I do, yes, I can understand that, but I think you'll see that Serbia is, if you know, I mean, there's a perception is, to me, is incredible thing. If you, for example, think about, you would say military relationship between Russia and Serbia, and when you look at the numbers, you would not believe what the actual numbers say. The actual numbers say that the biggest number of, for example, of military exercises and joint activities are by far and large bilateral between Serbia and the US. That's number one. Right. Number two is NATO in terms of partnership for peace. Number three is Russia. But the perception is very different. So I tend to try and portray a more realistic image of Serbia because I think the perceptions have drawn us in a different direction. I have to say this, Serbia is number seventh country in Europe in terms of support to the peacekeeping mission, both the UN and the EU, number 7, first in the region. And people don't really know about that. We have, in terms of respect, we are the most multi-ethnic country in Europe. People don't really know that. So that's the different image of Serbia, which I'm really eager to portray.
And give us a clue of how the issue of Kosovo is going to be resolved.
We're very open about dialogue with Pristina. We are, again, always calling for the full implementation of the Brussels Agreement. Serbia has done a lot to implement very, very difficult things, very politically unpopular, that are coming from the Brussels Agreement, and Pristina needs to start doing that as well. And the number one thing, the backbone of the Brussels Agreement, is the community of the Serb majority municipalities. So that would be a really good step in the right direction. But you've seen that the president has also invited for a nationwide dialogue, internal dialogue on what we want to achieve. And I think that kind of dialogue has been, I don't think there was a lack of courage in that. And so I'm eager to see, as the Prime Minister, what different segments of the Serbian society will say as part of that dialogue.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister.